Roberta. Shabbat Shalom. Doing very well. How about yourself? All right. How about the dog? Always. Good. All right. Excellent. I'm sure he did. I wrote a song for my friend Josh Goldberg, who became a cantor. And so it was for his cantorial installation service in Nashville. Yeah.
I knew I had seen your name all over.
Yeah. So it was a Shehechianu that I wrote.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
You still have a whole minute to talk, so live it up. Another one you also wanted to do, or you decided not to?
I was just going to play as people were going in, but it's already time.
All right, my friends. Well, welcome, everyone. Shabbat Shalom. I'm so glad you're here with us tonight to celebrate Shabbat together. And tonight is a special night here. We're celebrating Pride Shabbat. So I hope that you will lift up your voices in song, that you will participate and really be part of this experience tonight. We're going to start with the words of Hine Matov on page 10. This is a new one, but I just learned it. It's pretty simple. So I hope you'll learn it and sing along too.
Yananai, yananai, hine matov. Yananai, yananai, humanayim. Yananai, yananai, shevet achim. Shevet achim gam yachad. Your turn. Yananai, yananai, hine matov. Yananai, Yananai, Umanai. Yananai, Yananai, Shevet Achim. Shevet Achim Gam Ya. Let's try it again. Yananai, Yananai, Nemato. Yananai, Yananai, Umanai. Yananai, Yananai, Shevet Achim. Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Let's light up the world, oh brothers and sisters, together with peace and love. There's light to the world, oh sisters and brothers, and sing Hine Mato. Yananai, Yananai, Hine Mato. Yananai, Yananai, Umanai. Yananai, Yananai, Shevet Achim. Shevet Achim Gam Yachad. Let's light up the world, oh brothers and sisters, together with peace and love. Bring light to the world, oh sisters and brothers, and sing Hine Mato. Yananai, Yananai, Hine Mato. Yananai, Yananai, Umanai. Yananai, Yananai, Shevet Achim. Shevet Achim Gam Yachad.
Beautiful. So tonight we will begin with our candle lighting and our kiddush and motzi, and it's my pleasure to invite up Carrie and Amelia Goldwasser. Where did I lose you all? Perfect. And candles and kiddush can be found in the beginning of your prayer book on page 2. Adonai, Eloheinu, melech haolam, asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Beautiful. Atah Adonai, Eloheinu, melech haolam, borei pri hagafen. It's juice, but still. we do motzi too. Sorry, I forget. There's challah in there. Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz. Amen. Do you want a bite? Okay. You can have some later. Beautiful. So Rabbi Michael is in Israel, and I spoke with him a while ago. It was pretty late there, but he called to tell me that he had gone to celebrate Shabbat at the Western Wall. And if you've ever gone to the Kotel on Shabbats, you know that there are sort of the hardcore Orthodox folks who are there, and then there's also a lot of very, very young people, usually birthright trips. And he said to me, I got to the wall and I thought, I am neither of these things. I'm not someone who is so observant and who is there, with my full religious garb, who's prepared to have this experience. But he said, I'm also not a kid anymore. Is there a place for me? And am I going to be able to be there and relax and have fun? And he said that he went there, and while at first he was sure he was just going to stand back, just being there and looking at the wall reminded him of what Shabbat is all about. That it's all about an opportunity wherever you are to just be able to be in the moment and be really whoever you want to be and let go and sing and have some sort of meaningful experience, even if it's what you weren't expecting. Now, I don't know what you all came here expecting tonight, but I hope that you will let yourselves go just a little bit. That tonight you'll have the opportunity to really sing and lift your voices and your bodies and your spirits in prayer so that whatever it is that Shabbat is supposed to bring you, that tonight you can find it. So if you are able to do so, I would ask you now to please turn to page 28, and we'll rise and call each other to worship with the words of the Baruch Hu.
Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai 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 lai. Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed. Yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai, yai lai lai, yai lai lai lai, yai lai 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 lai.
Please join me in the English on page 31 at the bottom. This is an hour of change. Within it, we stand uncertain on the border of light. Shall we draw back or cross over? Where shall our hearts turn? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? This is the hour of change, and within it we stand quietly on the border of light. What lies before us? Shall we draw back, my brother, my sister, or cross over? Baruch atah Adonai Hama'ariv Aravim. I join in the words of Ahavat Olam, reminding us of God's love for us and our people on page 32. Ahavat Olam, Beit Yisrael. We read together at the top of 33. As you taught Torah to those whose names I bear, teach me Torah too. Its mystery beckons, yet I struggle with its truth. You meant Torah for me. Did you mean the struggle for me too? Don't let me struggle alone. Help me to understand, to be wise, to listen, to know. Lead me into the mystery. Baruch atah Adonai, ohev amo Yisrael.
Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai, Adonai Echad. Yain Elai, Elai, Yain Elai, Yain Elai, Yain Elai, Elai, Yain Elai, Elai, Yain Elai, Yain Elai, Elai. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto, Leolam, Leolam Va'ed. Baruch Shem Kivod Malchuto, Leolam, Leolam Va'ed. Yain Elai, Elai, Yain Elai, Yain Elai, Elai, Yain Elai, Elai, Yain Elai, Yain Elai.
Please be seated. But we have a few upcoming B'nai Mitzvah students who have offered to help us. So if you are one of those students and you know who you are, come on up. Beckett, that's you too. Beautiful. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol meodecha v'hayu
הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך על לבביך ושיננתם לבניך ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ושוכבך ובקומך וקשרתם לאות על ידיך והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם אני אדוני אלוהיכם אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם אלוהים אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
On page 39, standing on the parted shores of history, we still believe what we were taught before ever we stood at Sinai's foot, that wherever we go, it is eternally Egypt, that there's a better place, a promised land, that the winding way to that promise passes through the wilderness, that there's no way to get from here to there except by joining hands and marching together.
כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נטע בקודש, תורת תהילות עושה פלא, תורת תהילות עושה פלא. Leolam כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדע בקודש, לא רצי לא נוסף אלה, לא רצי לא נוסף אלה.
Those of you who I get to see every week, I know you may be sick of hearing me say this, but to me, this combination of these two prayers is one of the most beautiful and important ones in our whole service. You see, in our evening service, we say Michamocha, the song of freedom that our ancestors sang as they were freeing slavery, being freed from slavery and heading towards the promised land. But we always in the evening follow it with the words of Hashkivenu. Hashkivenu says, God, we know that freedom can be scary. That when there are not these rules and these boxes in which we are put, that it can be wonderful, but we can also feel a little bit alone and a little bit afraid. So we sing the words of Hashkivenu, asking God to continue to love us and spread peace over us wherever we may go once that freedom is ours.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm.
Page 43.
Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storms. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu L'Shalom. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu L'Shalom. V'hamidenu, Shomreinu L'chaim. Sukat Shlomecha. Let there be love and understanding among us. Let peace and friendship be our shelter from life's storm. Hashkivenu, Adonai Eloheinu. Hashkivenu,
Shelter from life's storm. Shelter from life's storms. We turn now to 46, and I invite you to rise, and we'll join together in words of tefillah. Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi agita ilatecha. Adonai, open up my lips that my mouth may declare your praise. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohei avoteinu v'imotzeinu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, v'Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, v'Elohei Leah, Ha'el HaGadol, HaGibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomer Chasadim Tovim, v'Koneh HaKol, v'Zocher Chasdei Avot v'Imahot, u'mevii geula livnei b'neihem, למען שמו באהבה, מלך עוזר ומושיע ומגן. ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם ועזרת שרה. אתה גיבור לעולם אדוני, מחיה הכל אתה רב להושיע. מכלכל חיים בחסד, מחיה הכל ברוח. ימים רבים, סומך נופלים והופך עולים, ומתיר אסורים, ומקיים אמונתו לשני עפר. מי כמוך בעל גבורות, ומידו מלך, מלך ממיץ ומחיה, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות הכל. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי הכל. אתה קדוש ושמך קדוש, וקדושים בכל יום יהללוך סלם. ברוך אתה אדוני, האל הקדוש. Please be seated. So at this time in our service, we are going to do, as we always do around now, which is actually put away the Siddur for just a little bit so that we can do our healing prayer. Because traditionally, the healing prayer is actually not something that you even do on a Friday evening service. It is a tradition really that was started by Debbie Freeman of blessed memory, because when she wrote her Mishaberach, people just wanted to sing that song so badly that we just kept adding it to the service. Tonight, though, we're going to do a different kind of healing prayer. I know you love Mishaberach, but this one is good too, because this one is the words that Moses sang for his sister Miriam when she fell ill. It's so simple. He just said, El na rafana la. Please, God, heal her, please.
Dear God of our ancestors,
Dear God of our ancestors,
help us renew our faith.
help us renew our faith.
Grant us a perfect healing.
Grant us a perfect healing.
Bring peace to all our days.
Bring peace to all our days.
El na rafana la, rafana la nu. El na rafana la, rafana la nu. Restore our strength of body.
Restore our strength of body.
Help clarify our minds.
Help clarify our minds.
Refresh our tired spirits.
Refresh our tired spirit.
Rejuvenate our light.
Rejuvenate our light.
El na rafana la, rafana la nu. El na rafana la, rafana la nu.
So if there's someone who you're thinking of who could use prayers of healing and who would appreciate knowing that their names were said in this space, I invite you to share them at this time. We're thinking too tonight of Carl Nieblock, of Glenn Figgis, of Steve Zamler and Kurt Deutsch, of Ira Bank, of Evan Abowitz, of Lisi Weinstein, of Arlene Alper. So for them and the names we say to ourselves, El Narafana La.
Thank you for all these blessings.
Thank you for all of these blessings.
Throughout our days and nights,
Throughout our days and nights,
we celebrate the journey.
we celebrate the journey.
This precious gift of life.
This precious gift of life.
El nar rafana la, rafana la nu. El nar rafana la, rafana la nu. El nar rafana la, rafana la nu. Ose shalom bimroma, huya ase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimroma, huya ase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimroma, huya ase shalom aleinu. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'alku Yisrael. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'alku Yisrael. Ose shalom bimroma, huya ase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimroma, huya ase shalom aleinu. Ose shalom bimroma, huya ase shalom aleinu. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'alku Yisrael. Yase shalom, yase shalom, shalom aleinu ve'alku Yisrael.
So a few years ago, it was either 2 or 3 years ago on Rosh Hashanah, Rabbi Michael gave a Devar Torah, and in it he talked about the Bintel Brief, which are these letters that were written by new Jewish immigrants to this country about concerns that they had, questions they had. It was basically the origin of Dear Abby. This is another one of those letters. It's written to the Yiddish Forward in 1936. We're the editor of the Forward. Not long ago, I read a story in the Forward that took place in America about how a girl became a man. But that's not news to people in the town where I'm from. In our shtetl in Ukraine, everyone knew Bela, the girl who sold herring, geese, and other foodstuffs. She was a tall redhead and sturdily built. She spoke with a deep bass voice and walked with hard and heavy steps. Years flew by, and Bela grew too, until she reached the age of 23, and one fine morning Bela left for Odessa, where she was introduced to an important professor. She spent a long time under his care, under which Bela eventually became a man. In the shtetl, we waited impatiently for her return. And on the day when Bela was to arrive, half the shtetl ran to the bridge to greet her, or better said, to greet him. And she wasn't called Bela anymore, now she was Beryl. And when we saw her, it was as if we were stunned. Before our eyes was a handsome, healthy, and happy man. Anyone who didn't know Bela previously would never have known that he had been a girl. From then on in the shtetl, she was called Beryl Bela. With the help of the professor, the government freed him from military service. Beryl Bela soon learned to daven and was in synagogue every day. Later on, he got married to an old girlfriend, Rachel, who was a nice girl. In our shtetl, Beryl Bela always had a good name as a fine, upstanding Jew. Now, that letter is from 1936, but it actually should not be that surprising to us, because for almost 2,000 years, Judaism has understood the idea that gender was not limited to male and female. In fact, in most Jewish sacred texts, you will find that there are 6 very specific different terms for genders. There is zachar, which is male, nekeva, which is female, androgynos, which you can see here sounds like androgynous, tumtum, ailonit, and saris. These 6 different, and whether you might think, well, maybe they're mentioned once or twice, no, they are each referred to hundreds of times in the Mishnah, in the Talmud, in the Midrash, in all of these sacred Jewish texts, which is kind of awesome. The idea that our Jewish tradition recognized the idea that gender wasn't binary, and these were written around the year 300 CE. The Talmud was compiled around 500 CE, but they were written 300 and 400 CE. So this is remarkable to think that Judaism was so forward-thinking. And I would love to end this sermon right there. But I can't. Because here's the thing. We know very well that there are people all over this world who like to use scripture and sacred texts as weapons, or occasionally as shields. But they use them for reasons that we might not be comfortable with. This week alone, if you read the story about I think it was in St. Charles actually, the library where someone was not pleased with how someone was dressed, not according to the gender that they presented as, and there was a whole meeting about it, and if you read exactly what was talked about at that meeting, there was a whole lot of scripture thrown around trying to defend each side. So we, as people who are religious, also know that we have to be intellectually honest. That if we are going to look at our Jewish sacred scriptures and use them as a lens for understanding our world, that we cannot just pick and choose and say, isn't this awesome that this relates to how I feel? We have to ask the more difficult questions, which is, why is this in our sacred scriptures in the first place? Who put them there, and what is their purpose? And that answer, perhaps, is not quite as pleasant to speak about. Because the reason that these 6 different definitions of gender are in the Mishnah and the Talmud and the Midrash is that even though ancient Judaism understood that there are multiple ways to look at gender, that different people can really be more than just male or female, the way the Jewish law works, the way that you actually have to live in the world, is absolutely binary. There are different rules for men and for women. And the reason that they give us these 6 different definitions is so they can know which box you fall into to make sure that you are following the correct rules. And when we actually look at why those things exist, why we have these strict understandings of male and female, well, those rules, in my mind, they fall into 3 categories. One is they are restrictively practical. Number 2, they are ignorant. Or number 3, they are just downright misogynistic. And we have to understand where those teachings are coming from if we are going to be able to have a good understanding of how gender plays out in our sacred scriptures and in Judaism itself. You see, because in Judaism, men and women are expected to do very different things. There are many mitzvot, many commandments that are what we call time-bound mitzvot. They are commandments that you actually have to do at a certain time of day. So just as one example, one would be praying. That traditionally in Judaism, you pray morning, noon, and night. You pray 3 times a day at these specific times. But if anyone has ever raised children before, or really just been around young children, infants especially, you know that they do not always follow a schedule very well. That if your job is to change or to feed or to put down little ones for naps, you may not be able to make it to pray morning, noon, and night. And because the assumption was that women were going to be the primary caretakers of the children, that meant that women were not obligated to pray during those times because it was expected you might be busy. You might be busy with a baby and doing something else important. Which actually sounds like a very practical reason, right? It's still putting women and men in different boxes, but it seems very practical and like a nice thing to do. But what happens when you start saying that women don't have to participate in daily prayer, what it also means is very quickly that women's voices do not count. Unless you think that this is something that only happened 2,000 or 1,000 or even 500 years ago. 2 weeks ago, I got a call from someone who needed to make a minyan for their prayer service, and they were calling me to see if I could put Rabbi Michael on the phone. Because my voice did not count. This is still very true today. That even though there are reasons that maybe they made sense when they were put out there, to this day, even in the modern Orthodox community, women's voices do not count. Now, some of the reason for this, I lost my train of thought for 1 second. Some of the reason for this is trying to understand exactly what it is about women that might make people think that they could not actually participate in prayers. And this is where the ignorance comes in. There are certainly teachings in the Torah and later on in Jewish texts that have a serious discomfort with the idea of menstruation and of childbirth, and because of that, people did not feel comfortable with the idea of women getting anywhere close to a Torah scroll. I say ignorant because you're laughing because it's a ridiculous idea, but whatever, we know that people were very concerned about what menstruation might mean, but so there is something that they said women should not be close to Torah scrolls, and again, that seems like a ridiculous idea, right? We have several former bat mitzvahs here who absolutely were able to read from a Torah scroll, but again, should you think that this was just a long time ago, just 2 weeks ago, we had a girl who became bat mitzvah who had Orthodox relatives who would not step foot in the synagogue because she was going to read a Torah. And just this weekend at the Western Wall, there was yet another, I won't call it a riot, but it was definitely a fight where women were trying to read from the Torah scroll and men on the Orthodox side threw things at them. This is ignorance. This is just plain ignorance of people feeling that somehow a woman would be so impure that she would mess up a Torah scroll just by getting close to it. And now we get to the misogynistic part. I guess that was a little misogynistic too, but it does, it gets worse, don't worry. When we think about what it is also that made people feel that women weren't able or shouldn't be reading from these sacred texts, there are actually two very diverse opinions. One was because there was an idea that intellectually and spiritually, girls couldn't handle it. That somehow women were not capable of understanding sacred texts, that it was a waste of time. Why would you try to teach a girl when clearly there's no way that she could understand it? But there is also an equally strong opinion that said, you know what you really need to be concerned about? What if she does understand it? What if not only she understands it, what if she's good at it? What if she's so good at it? What if she's so good at reading Torah, at understanding sacred scripture, that she's better than her father or her brother or her husband and her son? Imagine the shame that they would feel if a woman was better than them. So we have all of these reasons that we need to keep in our minds when we are trying to understand these different ideas of gender in Judaism, because as lovely, frankly, as these different teachings about transgender Jews may be, when it comes right down to it, you still have to look at the teachings about men and women, and they are not very nice teachings. So what does that leave for us then? So this week, I came upon a text that I learned a long time ago, but it really, really hit home this week. It's a text by Amos Oz, who is this great Israeli author. And Amos Oz said, "We have inherited a house full of furniture from the Jewish past. And we must decide what goes into the living room, and what goes into the attic. Now, I think this is very true. But I will also just add that this week, after my grandmother's passing, this whole last week, I have been with my parents and with my aunts and uncles, and we have spent a lot of time looking at the furniture that we inherited. And what's remarkable is that it's not as simple as saying, are we going to put it in the living room or are we going to put it in the attic? There are some pieces that we say, I'm going to put it in the attic now, but I think I may want it later. There are some pieces that we are going to pass on in a different way. There are some pieces that we may hide for a while, but we know our kids will love in the future, and we are going to save it for them. This furniture and all of our traditions and all of our teachings, these are things that are going to come back again and again. That furniture rearranging is perpetual. And so too with the teachings of our sacred scriptures, with the teachings of Torah and Mishnah and Talmud. Even when it comes to gender, we have to be able to understand that what is meaningful to us now may mean something in a different way in generations to come. And that perhaps what's the most important thing about it is not just what the teachings say, but the stories that come with it. The stories that help us explain why it mattered then and what matters to us now. So for me, I look at these teachings, and as much as I may be bothered in so many ways by the way that Judaism looks at gender, I choose to say, I understand those teachings, and like so many of you, I choose to be living embodiments of the exact opposite and still consider myself to be very much a Jew. And I look at these different teachings of how Judaism understood gender and said, there are so many shades of gray for us to understand what gender and what sexuality looks like, that if they could figure it out almost 2,000 years ago, we should certainly be able to figure it out today. I know that in the weeks and the months to come, as we see more and more legislation coming forward, that there will probably be more sermons like this. That there will be more classes like this, and we will have a lot of discussions about what are the different Jewish perspectives on how we see gender and how we see the way that we should treat others in our society. But perhaps we should remember that for however many teachings there are about gender, there's more teachings about just be good to each other. Just love your neighbor as yourself. Look at the person who is sitting next to you and imagine that you too have experienced the suffering that they did. And then perhaps we'll be able to truly live out our Jewish values. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
So, we're going to do just a few brief announcements now and then conclude our service. So, my announcements, first of all, for all of our folks who are at home, who are enjoying the Tish this evening, we hope you're having a wonderful night. This is a new program. Don't worry, there will be more of them. That is called the Tish, which means the Shabbat table. It's an idea where people are getting together with new friends. They're watching services from the privacy of their living room, but all together, and then they're having a Shabbat dinner together and enjoying, hopefully, a discussion. So I hope you all enjoyed it and are having a wonderful meal. Call me if you have any questions afterwards. Tomorrow morning is the Roots of Anti-Semitism class. If you didn't come last week, feel free to attend. We only got to the first crusade. There's so much more anti-Semitism left, so come and join me. We'll be here at 9:45 to 11:15, and it was a lovely class, so I do hope that you will join if you are able to. Sunday, June 25th is the Pride Parade. You can see information about it there. And we also, for just a little bit longer, have this amazing raffle of green seats that we hope you'll participate in. It's a pretty awesome offer if you're into baseball or if you're just into Cracker Jacks and other baseball stadium food. It's a really wonderful raffle that helps support the temple and will allow you to have a wonderful time at the baseball game. So. At this time, I would ask you, if you will, to please turn to page 282 and rise, and we'll turn to the words of the Aleinu. Aleinu l'shabeach l'adon hakol, l'tet gedula liotzer breshit, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות,
ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא.
On 287, may we gain wisdom in our lives, overflowing like a river with understanding, loved each of us for the peace we bring to others. May our deeds exceed our speech, and may we never lift up our hand but to conquer fear and doubt and despair. Rise up like the sun, O God, over all humanity. Cause light to go forth over all the lands between the seas, and light up the universe with the joy of wholeness, of freedom, and peace.
ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו
At this time, we now recall with love the names of those taken from us in recent days, and our hearts go out to their families in sympathy as we recall their names: Esther Frank, Michael Greenberg, Joy Werner Melman, Patrick Thomas O'Gorman. And we now recall the names of those, the anniversary of whose death occurs on this Shabbat, and whose names have been inscribed in the archives of our congregation or on the Wall of Honor for perpetual memorial: Joseph Ach, Flora Altschul, Irma Baker, Roman Barney, Martha Brash, Toba Davidson, Fanny Davis, Albert Epstein, Anna Faber, Albert J. Figler, Gregory Brett Feiner, J. William Frank, Lena Herman Frank, Simon Michael Frank, Sophia Hartman Freund, Milton Freund Jr., John Feudenberg, Albert Ginsberg, Carl S. Glazer Sr., Rose Horn Glixer, Samuel R. Goldstein, Stanley Earl Goldstein, Augusta Rosenberg Gottlieb, Maurice Kaiser, Lily Glazer Kalerschman, Dave Clearman, Eva Davidson Cohen, Frank Coleman Kransberg, Dr. Jerome Fred Levy, Edith Lindner, Bertha Melgoza, Harry Meyer Jr., Milton Meyerson, Herbert Moss, Herman Charles Orchard, Louis B. Petschaft, Leslie Portnoy, Bertha Emmeton Richmond, Valma Glass Rothenberg, Clarice Rothman, Samuel Shukar, Harry Shapiro Jr., Julian Simon, Sid Seitman, Vera Phyllis Snyder, Sam Solomon, Harry Tucker, Barry Jerome Waldman, Emily Ackerman Wegeson, Harry Wilkins. So with these names and the names we keep in our hearts, we join in the words of the Mourner's Kaddish on page 294. Yitzgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, ba'alma divarach yiroteh v'yamlich malchuteh, b'chayachon uvyomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala uvizman kariv v'emru amen. Yehei shmei Rabbah mevarach la'alam olmei almaya, yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shmei dekudusha barichu, la'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechmata, da'amiran ba'ama v'imru amen. Yehei shlama Rabbah min Shemaya, v'chayim aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace and peace to all who mourn and comfort all who are bereaved. And we say, Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu v'al kol Yisrael ve'imru. Amen. Please be seated. So for the past few years for Pride Shabbat, we have tried to end with some sort of closing song that we felt was in some way appropriate for the night. So we've done Lady Gaga, and we did a little Cyndi Lauper. This one, I had like a running contest on Facebook, and no one figured out who it was. The clue I should have given should have said, if you went to summer camp in the 90s, you would know this. So I'm looking at Jenny and Laura at least and thinking, I feel like you girls would know this. But feel free to sing along if you do.
I'm trying to tell you something about my life. Maybe give me insight between black and white. And the best thing you ever done for me is to help me take my life less seriously. It's only life after all. Well, darkness has a hunger that's insatiable, and lightness has a call that's hard to hear. I'll wrap my fear around me like a blanket. I'll sail my ship of safety till I sink it. I'm crawling on your shores. And I went to the doctor, I went to the mountains, I looked to the children, I drank from the fountains. There's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me in a crooked line. And unless I seek my source for some definitive, closer I am to flying. Closer I am to flying. I went to see the doctor of philosophy with a poster of Rasputin and peered down to his knees. He never did marry or see a big great movie. He graded my performance. He said he could see through me. I spent 4 years prostrate to the higher mind. Got my paper, I was free. I went to the doctor, I went to the mountains, I looked to the children, I drank from the fountains. There's more than one answer to these questions, pointing me in a crooked line. And unless I seek my source for some definitive, closer I am to flying. Closer I am to flying. I'll stop by the bar at 3 a.m. to seek solace in a bottle or possibly a friend. And I woke up with a headache like my head against the board. Twice as cloudy as I've been the night before. I went seeking clarity. I went to the doctor, I went to the mountains, I looked to the children, I drank from the fountain. Here we go to the doctor, we go